Hello and welcome to Cafe DC. I'm Faz Rahman. Today our guest is a multifaceted personality, a businessman, a politician, and best of all, a great father. Shakur Ahmed is with us today. Shakur, welcome to Cafe DC.
Thank you for having me, Faz.
Absolutely. So let's talk about your politics first. I know you're running for a public office in the state of Maryland for its assembly. It's called
House
the
of Delegates.
Yes, House of Delegates. So, and this is not the first time that you're running, right? You have done it a few times in the past. What makes you do it again?
You know, when in 2012, when my daughter ran for school board, I had pretty much made up my mind not to run. Looking at my county, looking at my district, and the challenges county is facing, I felt that the current leadership is not doing its very best, and I wanted to just give it one more shot. Mm-hmm. In all of these runs, I've consistently done well. Mm-hmm. And I've always been very independent, and although I've been Democrat for 22 years, still have democratic values in me. But our county is predominantly Democratic county, and there's really no Republican or independent within the Democratic Party. So I figured I'd probably give it a shot the other way around and switch my party to independent. Mm-hmm. And that gives me a little bit more freedom to talk about issues, because our county is ranked in the bottom.
But when you run as an independent, basically what you're saying is you switch the party to basically be an outsider and still have a good impact on the party. So in philosophy, in ideas, you will remain a Democrat.
Yeah, I guess,
but run as an independent. Is that the case?
Yeah, you know, if you look at it, I think my, about 80% Democratic in values, particularly on the social values, I'm Democrat. And on the fiscal side, I'm fairly conservative to moderate, because being
so that is the 20% part of
20% of me. Yeah. So essentially, what has happened is, in a county where predominantly one party controls, it's very difficult to win the primary, because very few people show up, and most of them end up knowing the incumbents. And this time,
because of the name recognition, they just assume that yes.
Yeah, and the low turnout. So in general election, what happens? The turnout is higher, and my district has about 25,000 voters. 16,000 are Democrat, remaining independent.
Maryland as a whole is a very democratically inclined state. It's been a democratic state for a long time.
It is. I think that's if you've been paying attention to polls, the Washington Post poll just came out about 3 days ago. And although the advantage current Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown has over the Republican Larry Hogan is almost 2-1. There are 2 Democrats to 1 Republican, but the polls are showing that he's behind by 6 points. So I think generally, a lot of Democrats feel
Brown is behind.
No, Larry Hogan is behind 6 points.
Yeah,
and Brown is leading only by 6 points.
Yeah, 6 points. Okay.
He's leading.
So in your opinion, 6 points is not a great lead for a Democratic lieutenant governor in a Democratic state?
Absolutely. I think what is happening is the legislature is all predominantly Democrat, and I think for some reason, they're trying to, they're really not engaging independent and Republicans. And I think in my view, it's always the real policy happens in the middle. The 2 extreme ends, people do have extreme ends, and one side is on the left and on the right. But at some point, you really have to come and make a compromise. And I think one of the challenges in Maryland is that it is too, this dominance of one party sometimes doesn't really allow the other side to be heard.
Mm-hmm. Shakur, America as a whole is a diverse country, and Maryland more so. I mean, it's a very diverse state, and representing a minority in the state. How welcome you feel when you run for the office? I mean, there are stereotypes in our society. The media creates all kinds of caricatures of different groups, especially in an election cycle. Yeah. So how do you feel as a minority, quote unquote, candidate running on a major platform?
Yeah, well, I think if you look at it generally within the Democratic Party, it's much more open, inclusive in some way. And I think on the Republican side,
I think Republicans also claim that. So
yeah, but I think it's also advantageous if you're a Republican. They're looking for diversity. So if you look at, how it's been happening, you have two Indian Americans, Bobby Jindal and Nikki Haley, who are governors from the Republican side, although the majority of Indian Americans are Democrat. So I guess there is an advantage. The way I
except
look,
this guy,
yeah,
Bobby Jindal, right?
Bobby
He's-
Jindal. Yeah. So
he's a-
essentially, what happens is it's a little bit of a challenge initially, but since I've lived in the community for almost 24 years, I think the first run that I had a little bit of difficulty explaining people because of my name and a little bit of an accent and my background and not having enough ties in the community. But when my daughter ran in 2012, she had no problem at all. She also covers her hair. She does hijab, and she literally had no issue in terms of her candidacy. And I think at some point, I personally have gotten to a level where I think I've
So
crossed.
you're transferring your political genes to the next generation, huh?
Well, it's just accidental. It never planned out, by the way. I think both of our daughters are fairly active in community. They were active in school, high school, and college. And we really didn't plan out. But I think somehow, events happen. And they've been part of my campaign. So they probably picked up some things, although we were not able to make it in the campaign. But when people are working...
Yeah, actually, it's a good segue to my next question. I made a comment about you that you're also not just a businessman and a politician, but you're also a great father. And of course, you should be proud that your daughter, Rahila, was appointed by the governor, the state's governor, to the Board of Regents in the university system, the Maryland university system. So she's called Regent Rahila. So which is a big honor, and she's young, like she's how
She
old?
just turned 21.
Yeah, so I mean for a 21-year-old young woman to be appointed as a representative of the students in the state, right? So how does that feel, and how does that come about? I mean, how you become a nominee, a governor nominee all of a sudden at such a young age? Did she use your connections, your name recognition?
Yeah, well, I guess she probably picked a few qualities, particularly from her mom, who was extremely caring and generous and helpful. And I, being a dad, I think running several campaigns and being active, and we always have discussion on politics and public policy, what's been happening. So there were some tips she must have picked up, but I think the biggest...
so she was basically born in that community and raised probably.
Yeah, she was born
So
and
she's
raised
like-
in Bowie.
Yeah,
She went to high school.
same
and
district, yeah,
Same
same
district.
country,
So what happened was in 2012, she was a reluctant candidate for school board. She was only 18, and we were kind of, I had helped two young candidates in 2010 who were 18 years of age, and one of them actually made it. So that interaction of those two young candidates coming to my home and spending some time, I think kind of created some interest in her that she could also run for office. Although she was very young, she was reluctant, but she picked up when she started going out and meeting with citizens. She realized, and in fact, she was actually a pre-med student in the first year of college. And when she ran for school board, she immediately switched her, basically focus from medicine to finance and economics. So I think that run for school board was the factor which pretty much moved her into community service, education, and also being a leader.
I have noticed, Shakur, that I mean nationwide, and I don't know if it's a phenomenon, but it's a good trend actually, that you have seen lots of young people coming forward and participate in the electoral politics, from Alaska to Hawaii to look all the way northeast east. You have seen very young people also at the local level, like council members, mayors. So as a politician yourself, do you see this? How early is too early? Or, I mean, is it like, yes, I know you have to be able to vote to run for an office, but is it, I mean, from your own personal experience, you have seen it so up close, your daughters participating in practical electoral politics. Do you think, is it too early for them? Does it affect their studies? Does it affect their chances of becoming somebody else, like maybe excelling in other professions? How do they balance and divide their times between their politics? So as an aging politician, as an aging politician, I'm just no reflection on your age.
No, that's fine.
But of course, you being a dad, do you think is it going to affect her future plans for something else that she wants to be?
Yeah, the way I look at it, I think it needs to start early, particularly not as a potential candidate for some office. I think what needs to happen is early on, in my view, is parents need to. Some parents are very good at it. Some parents are not too connected, really do not know how to go about. And I think in my situation, our kids were fairly lucky because I knew exactly what was happening, what leadership programs were in school, and how to kind of encourage them. Generally, at teenagers, kind of, are reluctant to be involved into activities which they do not like. So I think if you expose them early on, I would start at age 13, 14.
But is politics a good thing
well,
to begin with? I mean,
no,
do you think it's a good
the,
idea for the people to just get involved? Does it pay dividends? Does it really matter?
No, I think the way I look at politics is really an extension of serving people. So if you look at it, trying to get into politics to be able to have some ability to influence and have power, I think is not the right reason to be in public service. So I guess if you get involved early in terms of understanding the issues at school level, running for the SGA president, you having that experience to talk to people, listen to people, be able to collaborate with them. And I think that experience is huge because that will eventually help you. I think when you get down to the college part, then you could probably take much more active part in the university. And I think to me, not necessarily just trying to focus and run for office should be the goal. The goal is to be involved and be contributing to the community in school and college and where you live.
And you can do that at different levels. Different capacities.
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And I think some people are natural, so they figure it. They probably move on the right path, and I think that's the way to do it. The earlier the better, because you probably would not make it the first run when you run for office, and similarly, that experience is huge because just imagine on one end, if you run for our office, you don't make it, but in the process, if you have made relationships and contributed, that would be an immense advantage for you on your resume. And that's
I think it's true in your case because you've been in politics for so long, and through this, you have been able to contribute, at so many levels, like philanthropy and mentorship.
Yeah, I guess the way I looked at it is, initially, I think the most important part for our community, particularly the Muslim community, is that we really have to be part of community. And there's so much going on in the news, and people are watching. But when you're active, and people see you, and they know this is the person from that part of the world, belongs to this faith, it's much easier because that's where you kind of basically disarm some of the arguments or basically build up your brand. I think that's how it would be looked at.
And dispels the wrong notions about your community,
right?
And the wrong stereotypes,
right?
And the portrayals in the media.
So, I think what happens is a good example in my situation is, and I ran in 1998 first time, not knowing how we were going to do, but I did reasonably well. I still was able to get almost about 2,500 votes. The winner had about 5,400 votes.
Wow.
And in one of the interesting thing happened in the election is the Board of Election had reporting on campaign finance reporting manually. We had to fill out the name of donors, and I had two young volunteers who were computer savvy. They actually made Excel sheets, and I made the report, and I went to Board of Elections, and they were shocked. How come you have a type report? And right after, when I lost, one thing I did, I made about 200 copies.
So they didn't know you were from Hyderabad, India, huh?
Well, I guess, they just, it was unusual for them to have a report which was typed up. So what I did was I took the Excel sheets my team made, I made 200 copies and sent it to all delegates and senators so they could, report properly. And, it was an opportunity for me to establish some goodwill and essentially, what I learned, pass on to people And I think that's how it works.
Very good. Shakur, we'll take a short break here, and then we'll come back and talk to you more about your business acumen, your entrepreneurship. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
People appreciate upfront positioning. So if I am a Democrat and I am, not in sync with some position on the Democratic side, I probably would have to articulate to my citizens and say, this is how I'm going to be working.
Welcome back. You're watching Cafe DC, and I'm Faiz Rahman, and our guest today is Shakur Ahmed. Okay, Shakur, so we were talking about politics and the contribution just by running for an office and not even winning. You have made good contribution in terms of understanding the process, making it known to your, your community, and actually converting your young daughters into a full-fledged, mature politicians. So, which is good. Yeah. So, as a father, I think I also have 2 daughters, and I'm sure you must be a proud dad that your children have followed you in your steps, being a politician, and basically not, as you said, not to seek power or influence, but just to contribute to the community, to the society, which is a very noble goal. But looking at, the overall democratic process, you live close to Washington, the nation's capital. You watch politics in Congress. There is some genuine gridlock in this town, and the politics has become very unpopular field. I mean, the Congress is not a very popular entity anymore. So what do you think? What's the problem here? Why politicians get together and get a few things done in time for people to benefit from their actions, rather than delaying, kicking the can down the road?
Well, I think what is happening is
again, these are questions, very commonly asked questions.
I think at the national level, it's more like a pretty much a profession for people. People who get into Congress. At local level, it's much more better, I think, to some degree. And I think when you get down to national, it becomes very, very difficult, because the amount of money you need to win the election, in order for you to rise into the leadership within the party, and be able to keep building your resume so you could run for a higher office from Congress to U.S. Senate or to governor. So I think it's pretty bad. But
it's
I think
a different ball game.
It's a ball game. But local level, you still could make a lot of difference. I think at the city level, the school board level, at the county council level. And I guess the biggest challenge I have seen is when you take a lot of money from different groups, sometimes you end up compromising your values. And I think that's where people have to make the individual decision. Do you really want to take a lot of money and basically be tied down? And I think the reason for me running independent is also I've never taken any money from any group, and I think the groups generally kind of tied down to establishment. And I think there could be a little bit more independence, and although you belong to one party or the other at the local level, you could still, if it doesn't require a lot of money, then you could do a good job. And essentially, in some situations you also have to stand up to the establishment too, because sometimes you are a minority, and in terms of taking a position on an issue, I think you could make a significant difference at the local level.
There is a dilemma for the candidates who run on Democratic platforms especially, and they come from different minority groups. And I know at least one example in Maryland. Somebody won the seat, but he took positions which were not consistent with their community's positions on those issues, especially social issues. And you running as a Democrat, for example, is a huge issue of gay marriages, same-sex marriages, right, or abortion, or sex education. So, but these are some of those social issues which aren't very popular with some of the groups that you come from, right? So, or you represent. So how do you reconcile? How do you make sure that people understand that yes, if you want to take a position on same-sex marriage, it's not gonna affect your standing in your community?
Well, there are two parts. I think the way I look at it is you really have to differentiate very clearly from the get-go. Do you want to be a leader within the community or within the place of worship which you want? You go to a mosque, temple, whatever, synagogue. I think the real challenge part, I think the real big challenge for people is trying to be leader in both parts. If you want to be a leader in the community, particularly on the faith side, or otherwise, a Pakistani American community or an Indian American community or a Bangladeshi American community, because culturally there are certain things. I think those individuals will always have difficulty running for a mainstream office, because when you run for a mainstream position for like House of Delegates or County Council, or then you really have to look at your demographics, then you really have to see your faith and make a decision. And if you think you're very conservative, then you be a Republican, because then you're consistent with however your faith values are. But there are a lot of spiritual people, there are a lot of Catholics who do not necessarily go along with the church, and I think I happen to be one of those candidates who look at running for office as an opportunity to serve and represent the views of my constituents, not my personal views.
So yeah, sometimes at the national level, it's very common. I mean, you saw Mitt Romney taking positions against his church. You have Vice President Joe Biden, who's Catholic, but of course he supports positions which are not very popular in his church. So it happens on the national level, but on this state level and local level, do you think you also have those issues confronting you?
Yeah, we had a major issue because particularly in my county, which is African American in some way, and sometimes they're conservative. If you look at the 2012 ballot initiative on same-sex marriage, a lot of African American clergy didn't support same-sex marriage. Similarly, Hispanic churches too, but I think but the leadership was in line on supporting that right for those individuals. So I think at some point, and I think people appreciate upfront positioning. So if I'm a Democrat and I am, not in sync with on some position on the Democratic side, I probably would have to articulate it to my citizens and say, this is how I'm going to be working. There are so many examples. In fact, my own delegate has taken positions which is completely, in line with probably her faith or whatever values she has, may not reflect with the values of my district. So I think one of the things...
So this is the fight that you'll have to fight all the time.
Yeah.
I want to talk about your entrepreneurship now, since we have a few minutes left. You've been a very successful, one-man show in the sense that you really have launched a company, I would say an international company, We Empower, and have been making contribution not just in business but also socially and in other fields. So let's talk about your background in entrepreneurship. How did you start that company? What does it do? And you have been very involved in India and in some groups in Pakistan and other places. So let's talk about that.
I really wasn't planning to start a company until '98 when I ran for office. And I found an opportunity when the dot-com boom came in, and I was had an idea to build up an application where I can connect citizens with elected officials at the federal level and state level. So I took that idea, started working on that, took a couple of years, spent a lot of money, really didn't know what to do, and almost came close to filing bankruptcy because I wasn't a typical entrepreneur trying to do some consulting work. I was building up a product. But 2003 late, I got a call from one of the companies in DC. They were doing some work for Governor Howard Dean, who was running for president. So that turned my company around because I had the skills by then, although my product didn't go anywhere. So I began consulting for that campaign, and then we were able to get some work in Microsoft. So I kind of moved on. So the journey is very, started with an idea, and then I moved into consulting. And in 2007, I tried to move back into the product field, and somehow in the economy, I also took a lot of beating because most of my investments were in ideas which didn't pan out. So I think we're a smaller company, very focused on the product side. And essentially, people do start companies for different reasons. services.
And you have won some prestigious awards as well.
We did. We were in Inc. 500 in 2007. We were Deloitte #1 fastest growing company in Maryland in 2008. So we did well, but I think at the same time, we are now a little smaller in size company, and we're a little bit more focused on the product side, and we're doing some interesting things. We're building up an application, a communication application, which could be useful to universities.
You also contributed to the electoral process in India. I mean, your company was involved in some candidates. What did you do there?
What we did was we built a couple of applications there very early in 2002. And we were not able to, because we got into building an application on the web when 2% people in India had access to the internet. But now we build up a small mobile app. It's called MP Connect, which is essentially allowing citizens to contact their member of parliament. I'm actually talking to a couple of people, including Pildat in Lahore, to see if I could build up same application in Pakistan. I haven't had much success, but we are talking. And so essentially, the other application we built on the communication application, I'm talking to a couple of people.
And it's an international operation, basically. I mean, you have people in India and here.
Yeah, we do. At this point, we are based out of India and mostly in the U.S. Yeah. So it's the U.S. It's a U.S. company. We have a small engagement with Microsoft and a small operation in India. And I think after this November 4th, I'll probably have to figure it out, how we're going to do some exciting stuff.
Hope you win, Shakur. You're a great candidate, and I think you have a great message. I hope your constituents will listen to you and vote for you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me, Faz.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for watching Cafe DC. Our guest, Shakur Ahmed, was here, and you heard his remarks. Thank you very much. See you next time.